Radahn, the Red Lion General and Star Scourge, is one of the fiercest demigods, known for shattering the stars and commanding one of the greatest armies in the lands between. But he grew so large that he needed to learn gravity magic, all so he would not have to abandon his beloved yet scrawny steed. Malenia the Severed and Blade of Mikola is one of the fiercest demigods, known as the undefeated swordswoman whose blade has been seen with wings when raised aloft. Wings of fierce determination. Yet since birth, she never knew relief from the accursed rot and decay she was born into. Morgott, the veiled monarch and omen king, is one of the fiercest demigods, known for putting many foolish ambitions to rest and stacking corpses on high during his time as the fell omen. Yet since birth, he was afflicted with the horns of the omen and shackled beneath the earth, all to hide the shame that would come from a child of the first Elden Lord bearing the mark of the Crucible. But after his defeat at the hand of Torrent's Chosen, something happens. His omen horns vanish, his tail disappears, and all that is left is a frail and pockmarked old man. A similar sight can be found at Mohgwyn Palace, in the cocoon of the Empyrean. The supposed eternally youthful and ever-bewitching Mikola is nothing more than a giant withered corpse. In fact, thanks to some debugging camera work, we can see that his model is exactly the same as Morgott's. So what's going on here? Why exactly do Morgott and Mikola look like this? Where do the demigods get their strength? And why are they all seemingly cursed? In the first part of this series, we looked at the uncertainty of Godwyn's parentage. Then we investigated the true age of the twin Empyreans. And last video, we deduced how the nature of blood has affected the lands between, because only through causality and regression can we find the truth. And thus we can reveal mimicry in all its forms. As we established in the last video, the Elden Ring is less of a physical ring and is more of an abstraction, that it represents something metaphysical. Metaphysics being a branch of philosophy that examines the basic structures of reality. So in that sense, the Elden Ring controls the structures of reality. It is the manifestation of the order in which all things within the lands between must abide by. The Elden Ring is comprised of various runes which, based on their arrangement and presence, dictate what the exact rule set the nature of the world must follow. Previously, we looked at the Elden runes, and specifically the Rune of Death, how its removal led to unending life, the need for Erdtree burial, and how Godwyn's curse mark spelled the end for the age of the Erdtree. Today, we will be looking at the next category of runes, the Great Runes.
Great runes are the stuff of demigods, the children of the goddess Queen Marika, she who is vessel of the Elden Ring. Tainted by the strength of their runes, her children warred, but none could become Elden Lord.
Since the Rune of Death was removed from the Elden Ring, the demigods cannot die. Instead, after their defeat, they are felled. Their Great Rune is transferred from their body to the body of our mimic, devoid of any blessings and benediction. Traveling to their respective divine towers, we find the true power of the Great Runes held between a pair of petrified two fingers, and it is the touch from our mimic, Great Rune in hand, that its power is restored. Using a rune arc, the lower arc for which is held to be the basin in which blessings pool, the power of the Great Rune is bestowed on the mimic. Much like when our mimic defeats enemies, or uses a rune item, fragments of the shattered Elden Ring are absorbed into their body, allowing Malenia to take those fragments and rewrite the reality of our character, literally changing the order within our mimic to make them faster, smarter, or stronger. From this, we can see that runes, whether great or just fragments, have a tangible effect on the vessel in which they are stored in. Since the Elden Ring is what controls the structure of reality within the lands between, the Great Runes must each be a building block, or an individual rule set that helps dictate what that reality looks like. By looking at each Great Rune, and their corresponding demigod, as well as a possible outer god, we can see that this reality-bending power has had a profound effect on the children of Marika. Goddrick was a mad old fool grasping for power, the runt of the litter, his divine blood sorely diluted. To prove he was the true heir to Elden Lord Godfrey, he draped him and his men in his supposed ancestral coat of arms, the gilded weapons and adornments of the royal capital, and the surcoat of the beast and tree. Godfrey was also the first to become tarnished, and as such, Goddrick literally covered himself in a coat of arms by grafting the limbs of the tarnished to his body. His Great Rune thus reflects this amalgamation of limbs from various bodies, and it increases each stat by 5. In part 1 of this series, we questioned Godwyn and Goddrick's paternal lineage, and came to the conclusion that they may actually share more blood with dragons than with Godfrey. The ancient dragons ruled the prehistoric lands before the Erd Tree, and their modern counterparts are comprised of many different aspects of various animals: breath, tail, feather, and knot. Perhaps the increase to all stats from this Great Rune is reflective of the diverse types of dragons that we can find. Ones who embody rot, fire, ice, and glintstone. Though, out of all of the Great Runes, Goddrick's is the most frail and thin. The light it produces is much weaker than the other demigods. The 1.0 description of the rune holds a curious line. This shard is an imitation, transcribed from one of the 4 large rings that make up the Elden Ring. In part 1, we discussed the life of Godwyn the Golden, and that although he died a soul death on the Night of the Black Knives, his Great Rune does not appear, nor is it ever mentioned. This could indicate that his Great Rune is still housed within his soulless flesh, or maybe it was destroyed in this event. Perhaps a hint that while Goddrick was a demigod, he had no Great Rune until he grafted the bodies of Tarnished to himself, the power deriving from others who absorbed a great many rune fragments. After his defeat, his Great Rune removed from his body, we see him for who he truly is, a sad old man, his face plunged in the mud. Across from the Limgrave Divine Tower, we have that of the Omen Twins, the true-born sons of Godfrey. Morgott's Great Rune holds the secrets for us to fully understand the power that Great Runes have on the demigods. When Morgott is defeated, his Great Rune is transferred to the Mimic. Wait, have I been saying Mimic this whole time? I meant to say Tarnished. When Morgott is defeated, his Great Rune is transferred to the Tarnished. He loses his horns and his tail, and becomes nothing more than a withered old man, draped in a cloak far too large for such a frail frame. Morgott and Mohg are the twin brothers born from Marika and Godfrey, leader of the Crucible Knights, and they were born as omens. Since they were born of royalty, they did not have their horns excised, but instead were kept underground and imprisoned. The budding of horns, sprouting of fangs, and that of scale, feather, and knot are all vestiges of the primordial crucible of life. These were seen as divine in ancient times, but now increasingly disdained as an impurity as civilization has advanced, considered as chaotic and deserving of scorn. Before the creation of the Golden Order, when primordial gold was tinted red, and the Numens were a common sight in the world. As such, Morgott's Great Rune holds the power of the primordial crucible of life, and when activated, HP is greatly increased, his devotion to the Erd Tree reflected in the brilliant gold of his rune. Mohg, on the other hand, found devout love in his accursed omen blood, and his Great Rune reflects that. It is completely red and grants a blessing of blood to summoned phantoms. If we were to look at the Numen rune and compare it to a Grace rune, we can see that they share the same shape and size. But where we see the Grace rune is completely gold, the Numen rune still has a red tint. From this we can deduce that in order to create gold in the lands between, red must be removed, where red is either representing death, or the crucible, or sometimes chaos. Morgott and Mohg exemplify this duality, with Morgott's rune being completely gold, and Mohg's rune being completely red. Another interesting thing about Morgott's Great Rune is that it proves that he was born of the golden lineage, that he is a true son of Godfrey, and that by rights he is the true lord of Leyndell. His twin brother Mohg's Great Rune is naturally similar, both enhancing the blood of the holder in a sense, but also sharing the same shape to Morgott's. Both brothers afflicted with the horns and strength of omens, and the ability to explode their blood into fire, as seen with Morgott's cursed slice, and just everything about Mohg. In my previous video, we covered the interesting dynamics of omens and their blood. Please find it here for more information. We know that Mohg also made contact with the outer god known as the Formless Mother. The Formless Mother is known as the Mother of Truth. From this we can deduce that Mohg is related to the outer god of truth. Morgott, on the other hand, is never mentioned to have met the Formless Mother. But he does disguise himself as Morgott, the Fell Omen, to hunt those who would harm the Erd Tree, though it never loved him in return. Could this be indicating that Morgott is related to an outer god of lies, if one even exists? Through the lies he tells himself, and the disguises he wears? And if a god of lies did exist, would we even be able to know? When Morgott is felled, his great rune is transferred from him to the Tarnished. Its power and its curse are removed, his vitality is gone, and so are his omen horns. Unfortunately, we don't know what happens to Mohg after we defeat him. Perhaps we shall meet him again, in the Land of Shadow. So from the great runes of the Omen brothers, we learn that we can prove who their parents are, and that they also seem to be the source of the affliction that they were cursed with since birth. This is important to understand because this tells us how the demigods came about their great runes. From Hugh and Malenia, we know that Marika's goal has been to burn the Erd Tree and to slay the Elden Beast, which is the Elden Ring. The Elden Ring is malleable, where Marika's sole need for her shadow-bound beast Malekith was as a vessel to lock away destined death. It seems this may also have been the need for her children. Each a vessel to lock away a piece of the Elden Ring, a piece of the god she wished to slay. Like every parent, she gave a piece of herself to her children. She gave them each a piece of the Elden Ring. And before you leave a comment about how they claimed their great runes after the shattering, let's reread the intro cutscene together.
The great Elden Ring was shattered. In our home, across the fog, the lands between. Now, Queen Marika the Eternal is nowhere to be found.
That makes sense. The Elden Ring is shattered, and Marika is missing.
And in the night of the Black Knives, Godwyn the Golden was first to perish.
Also, Godwyn died in the Night of the Black Knives. That happens before the shattering of the Elden Ring.
Soon, Marika's offspring, demigods all, claimed the shards of the Elden Ring.
Soon after what? Soon after the Night of the Black Knives? Soon after the shattering of the Elden Ring? Soon after now? We have no way of knowing.
The mad taint of their newfound strength triggered the shattering.
As previously established, the Elden Ring controls the laws of nature within the Lands Between. It would stand to reason that when the Elden Ring is shattered, it could affect its great runes no matter where they are in the world. Otherwise, do you think Radahn and Rykard were playing some Elden Cart double dash and picked up the great runes as a power-up? So with all that said, if you're going to post a comment about this without citing a source, I will send the lore police after you. They're in my comments all the time, and they're not pleasant. Speaking of Radagon's Carian sons, we see something similar. Rykard and Radahn both have similarly shaped great runes, and both have afflictions thanks to those runes, their respective divine towers directly across from one another. Portraits and images of Rykard before he fed himself to the great serpent god show him with a gray complexion, almost as if his skin is shedding. His great rune is similarly gray and sickly, but much like an ambitious serpent, by attacking enemies, HP is restored. The hunger of always wanting more driving Rykard forward. Rykard then feeds himself to the great serpent god, his ambition driving his desire to consume the world. Radahn, on the other hand, has the flaming red hair of his father, and the fire giants, as well as their large stature, growing so large that he traveled to Celia to learn gravitational powers. Also, he would never have to abandon his beloved yet scrawny steed. Much like his giant stature, his great rune enhances maximum HP, FP, and stamina, making the bars literally bigger. The knights who fought by General Radahn's side wore red plumes on their helmet as a symbol of Radahn's pedigree as Lord Radagon's son, the mane of the proud red lion. Funnily enough, A family of lions is known as a pride, and pride cometh before the fall. So much like the giants and their fell god, his great rune burns to resist the encroachment of scarlet rot. Both brothers also share in a similar fate. One is consumed by a warrior jar, the power of Radahn's giant and proud flame transferring to a new vessel, and one is consumed by the woman who loved him, the woman who pushed him towards blasphemy. Lastly, we have the twin Empyreans, Miquella and Malenia. From birth, both suffered afflictions. Miquella was cursed with eternal childhood, and Malenia was born harboring the scarlet rot. Her great rune is also succumbing to rot, and thus reduces the healing power of the Erd Tree. Yet due to the infusion of Malenia's spirit of resistance, she was able to press on. When she is defeated by our Tarnished, and her rotted great rune is transferred from her body to our characters, the rot leaves with it. She blooms into a flower. No more rotting, no more suffering, no more pain. The essence of the outer god of rot leaves her body, and she is finally at peace after an eternal lifetime of torment. Miquella was only able to heal his sister with the bitter steel of Torrent's chosen Tarnished. The demigods are all immortal beings due to the removal of destined death from the Elden Ring. As such, they are not actually killed at the end of their boss fights. With the removal of their great runes, they all transform in some way. Goddrick loses his grafted limbs and is nothing more than a torso and a head. Radahn and Rykard are both consumed. Malenia blossoms into a scarlet flower. Morgott loses his omen horns, and his body does not disappear until he is embraced by Godfrey after Destined Death is released. Mohg is the only outlier, but being that he is the Lord of Blood, perhaps he's just pooling around on the floor somewhere. Or maybe we will meet him again in the Land of Shadow. But if that is the case for the demigods, what about their mother Marika? When we find her, she is a husk, barely a shadow of her former self. Looking at her, do you see pride, ambition, truth, lies, rot, decay, anything at all? I don't. And so that leaves us with one last great rune, the great rune of one cursed with eternal youth, the great rune of the Unborn, the great rune of Miquella. Following the criteria set by the great runes of Morgott and Mohg, Rykard and Radahn, siblings, particularly twins, should share great runes of similar shapes. The great rune of the Unborn and Malenia's great rune both sharing similar shapes. One is rotting away, while the other is much smaller, as if it never had a chance to grow up. By combining this information with what we know of Miquella, it makes a lot of sense that this would be his great rune. Miquella is in a cocoon when we find him, much like the great rune is in an amber egg, or his nascent butterflies, which are described as if they just emerged from their cocoons for their entire lives. The great rune of the Unborn gives the power of rebirth, the ability to be born again. Larval tear in hand, we can bring our Tarnished to the amber egg and change our stats. We can even mimic our favorite demigods, or mimic our favorite manga characters, or mimic our favorite Tarnished. This completes the duality set by Malenia and her great rune. Whereas Malenia is in a constant state of decay, Miquella was cursed with eternal youth, and his great rune allows for reincarnation. Yet rebirth is not without imperfections, and thus the process is repeated, never allowing for full growth, only change and new beginnings. Why not try an arcane faith build for the DLC? Why not start something new? And with his great rune of the Unborn removed from his body, housed in an egg made from Halig Tree amber, the curse of eternal youth is severed, and much like Morgott, his body transforms. No longer trapped in the body of a small boy, but now a full-grown man, and a withered corpse. If Marika gave a part of herself to each of her children, what did she give to Miquella? My friend on the channel Centered Tarnished looks at Elden Ring from the perspective of Jungian psychology, and without his insight, the following theory wouldn't be possible. Please go subscribe and watch his videos. You're going to be thanking me that you did. One of the goals of Jungian psychology is individuation, to become your authentic self. It is the process of self-realization and transformation that includes bringing your unconscious mind to your conscious mind and integrating it into your personality. One of those steps is rediscovering the child you left behind, rejoining yourself with your inner child. The playfulness, creativity, and spontaneity that we had in our youth that may all but seem gone most days within adulthood. If you watched my video on the lies of Miquella's eternal youth, you would know we came to the conclusion that Miquella and Malenia are some of, if not, the oldest demigods birthed by Marika. As such, Jung describes the inner child as the inner god of the self. It is the oldest and most authentic sense of who we really are. Miquella has divested himself of his flesh, his strength, his lineage, of all things golden. He has departed to the land of shadow, a place obscured by the Erd Tree, where the goddess Marika first set foot. Now he awaits the return of his promised lord. Perhaps his lord will not only mend the world, but he will make Marika whole again. Thank you for watching. My next video will be the last of this series before the DLC, and it will be about the most important character in all of Elden Ring.